Hello, can you see me?
Yes, we can see and hear you.
Oh, great. Okay. You haven't started yet.
Not yet. We're just waiting a few moments so that others have a chance to join us. Thanks for your patience.
Okay. It has a messaging. A participant has enabled closed captioning. Who can see this transcript? Do I just X that out?
Yeah, you can go ahead and X that out if you don't need it.
Okay. Oh,
Welcome, everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we are a few minutes after the hour and we have over 80 people who've joined us so far. So I think, shall we go ahead and get started? All right. Jeremy, would you like to kick us off?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Anna. So good afternoon, everyone, and happy Wednesday. My name is Jeremy Taylor. I'm the Director of Worksite Wellness here at the Health Department, New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. And I'm just excited to be co-hosting this with my colleagues. So I am going to uh, talk a little bit about what today's session will entail. So for today, in today's discussion, our topic is building connections and combating loneliness. And for today's discussion, we wanted to do an overview of loneliness and social isolation. What are those things, right? We're going to talk a little bit about the components of social connections. Um, we'll also talk about some factors that influence our connections, and then we're going to wrap up with some strategies for building these connections in life and at work, and close out with some holiday considerations and resources for you. And as we continue to go throughout, please feel free to add any comments or questions in the chat. You can utilize the chat for that. And please also remember to mute. And you are welcome to raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question. And we will acknowledge you, and then you can either share your question verbally or add it into the chat. So as mentioned, my name is Jeremy. I'm the Director of Worksite Wellness at the Health Department, and I'll pass it over to Ivy.
Hi, I'm Ivy. I'm an EAP counselor with the Employee Assistance Program.
Okay, and I am Anna Tan, the Assistant Director of Programs at WorkWell NYC. All right, so thank you, Jeremy, for that lovely introduction. And so for today's goals and learning objectives, we will talk about the impact of loneliness and social isolation on our well-being. We will talk about what social connection is and the factors that can influence it. And we will discuss strategies for building connections in personal and professional life. Next slide, please. Okay, so first we would like to get things started with a quick poll just to see how people are feeling. So one moment while I get that poll launched. Okay, and so the poll question is, how satisfied are you with your current social support network? And the options are very satisfied, somewhat dissatisfied, very dissatisfied, or unsure. So please take a moment to respond to the poll. Okay, great. So thanks for responding to the poll. So responses seem pretty mixed, but for the most part, almost evenly split down the middle between somewhat satisfied and somewhat dissatisfied. And so with today's presentation, although Jeremy and Ivy and I have some information to share with all of you, this is also an opportunity for all of us to learn from each other. So as Jeremy said, if any of you have any tips or ideas to share, please do so in the chat, and then there will be some opportunities to unmute to speak as well. All right, so next let's talk about the impact that loneliness and social isolation have on wellness. And so first of all, we know that having good health is more than just getting enough physical activity. It's more than getting enough fruits and vegetables in your diet. Wellness is holistic and encompasses many dimensions. And so as we can see here on this graphic, we have this wellness wheel with 8 dimensions of wellness. And those dimensions include financial, spiritual, intellectual, occupational, mental or emotional, physical, environmental, and social. And so today's topic, of course, is social wellness. So social wellness is about people's ability to maintain healthy relationships. It relates to being able to enjoy the company of others, develop friendships and intimate relations, care about other people, and allow others to care about you. And so from this image, we can see all of these dimensions are interconnected, and having neglect in one or more areas can negatively impact the others over time. So in general, as a baseline, it's good to aim to have some kind of balance across all these dimensions. But of course, there is no one size fits all approach. People may have different priorities and different things that they want to focus on. And so we encourage you to identify those dimensions that you feel like need the most attention, and then take steps to make sure that those needs are met. And so now we'll move on to the next slide to talk about the distinction between social isolation versus loneliness. And so these two concepts are related, but they are not the same thing. So loneliness is the feeling of being alone, regardless of the amount of social contact. So typically this can be a subjective negative feeling. An example of this could be people who live in a densely populated area, such as New York City, and being constantly surrounded by people, whether it's when you're commuting or at work and you're having a lot of social interactions, but still having those feelings of loneliness. On the other hand, social isolation is having few social connections. So objectively speaking, someone might have few social roles, few group memberships, and limited social interactions. So an example of this could be someone who lives alone, doesn't have a lot of social interactions, but peacefully and happily enjoying their solitude and still feeling emotionally fulfilled through those social interactions that they do have. And so social isolation can, but does not always, contribute to feelings of loneliness. And you do not have to be alone to experience feelings of loneliness. And so now that we've learned about the difference between these two concepts, let's learn more about the negative impacts that they have on physical and mental health. And so just like water, food, and shelter, social connections are a fundamental human need. There's a lot of research that shows that having a lack of social connections, as well as being isolated, can impact health and longevity. And so now I'll share a few statistics that were reported in the Surgeon General's advisory on our epidemic of loneliness and social isolation that really illustrate the importance of this. So data shows that loneliness and social isolation, a lack of social connection, increase the risk for premature death by 26% and 29% respectively. More broadly, lacking social connection can increase the risk for premature death as much as smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. Having poor or insufficient social connection is associated with a 29% increased risk of heart disease and a 32% increased risk of stroke. as illustrated by the image on the slide. Furthermore, it is associated with an increased risk for anxiety, depression, and dementia. And the lack of social connection may increase susceptibility to viruses and respiratory illnesses. And so the numbers really speak for themselves when it comes to showing the dramatic impact that a lack of social connection can have on everyone's health and well-being. And so another interesting statistic shared is that pre-pandemic data showed that 1 in 2 adults in the US already reported experiencing feelings of loneliness. And so, as you can imagine, the COVID-19 pandemic definitely had a dramatic impact on everyone's social connections and dynamics. Next slide, please. Okay, and so we've talked a little bit about the negative impact on health and wellness in regards to loneliness and social isolation, but what does that mean for the workplace? So employees who are lonely may experience less job satisfaction, feelings of burnout, and decreased productivity. And for those of you who may be working in a remote or hybrid work schedules, you may experience a decrease in the number of physical interactions. And so I'll share a personal example for myself. My team is largely operating on a hybrid work schedule. And so there are some coworkers that I might only see once or twice a week because we don't always have our in-office days overlapping. And so I'll just pose a quick question for you all. Please feel free to share your response in the chat. For those of you who are working on a remote or hybrid schedule, how has that impacted your connection to coworkers? And I'll pause here to see if anyone has any comments to share. Okay, I see some comments. It makes the time spent feel more appreciated. There is less opportunity for informal chats. Less fulfilling. Feeling more focused, but appreciate the meeting time I get with Teams meetings with my coworkers. Terrible for me. I like to see people at work. Fewer opportunities to get to know each other. Yeah, so it seems that there seems to be a common theme here for people who are having less of those in-person interactions. There does seem to be impact on their feelings of connection with others. All right, so we can move on to the next slide. Okay, so we've learned that loneliness and social isolation can impact health on a personal level, but also at the workplace level. And what does that mean? Is there anything that can be done about this? And so with that, enter the workplace bestie. So workplace friendships are a possible solution to addressing all of those challenges mentioned earlier. The average person may spend on average over 80,000 hours of their life at work. So it's not surprising that some people may develop friendships with their coworkers. 75% of Department of Health staff say that they have strong friendships at work, and we expect that this can vary from one agency to another, and also within departments within one agency. And so with this slide, we have a variety of memes, and they really illustrate the two extremes when it comes to social connection at work. So some people have a work friend or work bestie, and that is the highlight of their job. Having that work friend is what gets them through the day. They try to find ways to maximize their time with their work friend by working on assignments together, et cetera, et cetera. And then on the other hand, we have some people who might try to limit their interactions with others at work. They might have more boundaries. They might prefer to just, keep things more separate. And so now I'll turn it over to all of you. Where do you all feel on the spectrum? And so I have some questions for us to reflect on. So Jeremy, we can go to the next slide. So which image in the last slide most resonates with you? What are your thoughts on workplace friendships? Do you have a work friend? Are you interested in building a friendship with a coworker? Why or why not? Have you had a work friend leave for a different workplace but still maintain that friendship? If so, how? And what is the reason behind those feelings? So I will pause here and give everyone a chance to reflect on these questions. Please feel free to share in the chat, or you can raise your hand to unmute to speak. And please let us know if we need to go back to the last slide so you can study the memes more closely. Jeremy, can we go back to the previous slide, please? Uh-oh.
Yes, I was gonna add them on here so people can see them, but I will go back one slide for us.
And I will put the questions in the chat as well, so that
Perfect.
you don't have to memorize all of the material.
I can start reading some of them. One said, my work friends are the best part of work. I have good work friend interactions. Someone said, as a manager, I always taught that friendships in the office may eventually become a problem when the goals of the friendship and the business do not coincide. We have, it's fun having a coworker friend across the hall who likes to make bracelets with me during breaks. So a lot of great ones are coming in here. Again, which of the images resonate with you? What are your thoughts on friendships? Do you have a work friend? Are you interested in building a friendship? Why or why not? Someone else said, I have a work friend who is now part of my family and I hers.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, especially with that comment shared about workplace friendships potentially being a problem in the workplace. I think definitely people have their own, people have different comfort levels when it comes to workplace friendships and also cultivating those workplace friendships. It's not something that can necessarily be forced, but I think based on the information that was shared previously, it makes a strong case for having those workplace friendships or even encouraging them to develop.
Yeah, I agree. We can read maybe two or three more, and then let's see. We had someone here said, I had a few friends that retired or left during the pandemic. I do miss them, but I'm so busy with my tasks at work and with my daily meetings in teams that I have to stay focused on my current group. As I get older, it's harder to have relationships where I do things after work because I'm physically tired. Um, Someone else said, some of my lifelong close friends are people I met at work years ago. We still see each other. Also really enjoy colleagues I'm working with now. We just don't have as much time for socializing as life is busy. Yeah, and I think Anna, you're right. Like there's um, such a vast dynamic of the different types of experiences we might have within our work friendships, and also our reasons for why, you know, not wanting to cross that boundary. And I know that we're gonna highlight a little bit about boundaries a little bit later.
Yeah, I also see a comment in the chat. I wish I had a close work friend. It would be good for morale. Well, you're in the right place. We're definitely going to talk a little bit more about that. And, hopefully there are some others here who have some good suggestions to share too. So with that, I think we can transition on. And Jeremy, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thanks so much, Anna. And please keep the comments going. I think these are really great, and you can continue to have the conversation with each other in the chat. So the next section here is as Anna laid out the context of loneliness in America and the difference between loneliness and social isolation, and having this dialogue about, you know, our personal like opinions and feelings around different questions about connection at work, I want to focus a few minutes on actually building these connections to help us improve loneliness. And to get that started, first we should have a chat about what is social connection in the first place. So social connection includes the interactions, the relationships, roles, and sense of connection individuals, communities, or society may experience. Social connection has three main structures. The first, the first, or three main components, and the first of which is structure. And structure is essentially the number and variety of relationships that you have and the frequency of those interactions, right? For example, you may have a household relationship with family members, you may have a small friend circle, and perhaps close coworkers. You may interact with each of these every day, but they are all different relationships, right? The second component is function. So this is the degree to which relationships serve various needs. So in the examples I just shared, household, friend circle, coworkers, each of these have a different function and they can serve you um, with different needs and at different times, right? So perhaps your household provides you maybe support in a crisis, while your close friend circle provides additional emotional support. And maybe your coworkers, when you're at work, they serve as mentors and motivators, right? So all thinking about how um, all of the different relationships that we may have, how they serve us in different ways. And the third component of social connection is quality. And quality is essentially the positive and negative aspects of your relationships, right? And your interactions. Do they make you feel satisfied or do they drain you? Do you feel included or do you feel excluded? So in summary, it's important to understand what your social connection looks like, right? What is the structure? What are the functions and the qualities of the relationships that you may have? And today, I encourage you to take some time to reflect on this, right? As it can help you with applying key strategies that we'll discuss later in the presentation. So now that we have a picture of the foundations of social connection, it's important to acknowledge that there are also various factors that can influence what our connections even look like. As an individual, for example, perhaps there could be chronic disease or illness, physical or mental health, or even other individual factors that can impact how you show up or impact you and how you receive and respond in your networks and your social connections. Within your relationships, as we talked about the structure of them, the function of them, the quality of them, and even the behaviors of those within your relationships can impact your connections, right? Imagine, for example, you have uh, a coworker that your relationships are not good. Perhaps you might create more boundaries and barriers within this group and not interact with them that as much, right? Or perhaps the opposite. Maybe there are a few people who the interactions and the relationship is very positive and it serves you well, and you may spend more time with that group, right? So really thinking about again that like the structure, function, the quality of those relationships impact what your connections overall look like. Also, your community, right, can influence your connections. This can include things like, for example, housing, schools, your neighborhood, etc. And lastly, society. We live in a world where many societal and cultural factors like norms and values, public policies, even technology, right? They all influence our decisions, and that ultimately can influence and impact our connections as well. So the takeaway here is to know and acknowledge that all our connections are impacted by multiple factors, that it's not just one thing. And if you see the image on the right, you see how all of these things intertwine. Our self, our relationships, our community, and our society. We take all of these with us every day. Right. So we have an exciting activity that we're gonna break out to have a discussion about. So we want to explore your connections in this activity. So we're gonna have the questions posted, and we want you to take a moment to, self-reflect on, these questions. What is the makeup and structure of your current social connections? Um, how do they support you? How do you support them? What is the quality of these connections? Um, is there someone or a group you can reconnect with? What are the potential barriers to social connections, and what are the potential boundaries that can be created? Do any of your boundaries become barriers? So Anna will break us out into some small groups, and we just would like for you to have a discussion. We're going to spend about, I think we have about 5 to 8 minutes or so, but we'll put a timer on, and you'll get a timer when the group we're about to reconvene together. Anna, anything else?
Nope, I think that pretty much covers it. So I am getting the breakout rooms set up now. Okay, one moment. Okay, breakout rooms are now open, and looking forward to hearing some highlights of your discussions when we come back.
Pass it over to Anna to take it away for some of these tips in our personal life.
All right, thank you, Jeremy. So I will talk about some strategies that we have, which again, some of you have either shared verbally or in the chat, but one suggestion is to reach out. Don't be afraid to make the first move. Give a call, text, or email to an old friend. And I would also advise, don't be discouraged if they don't respond right away. We know that people have a lot of things going on. Sometimes life happens. And at the very least, the person who receives the message is probably grateful to know that you are thinking of them, even if they don't have the capacity to get back to you. And so the next suggestion is to commit to those, to following through on plans that you have to connect with others, whether it's meeting up with loved ones, chatting with family and friends, etc. And I think here also I would advise you to be realistic and also think about what your personal boundaries are. And can those boundaries be flexible? So for example, if I have some friends who say, hey, let's meet up at 9 p.m. on Saturday, and they're asking me to travel to a different borough, would I realistically do that? I might, but I also might not. And so I think, just being flexible with how you engage with others, but also being committed. You don't want to fall into that trap of let's meet up soon, and then no one takes any action. A meetup doesn't happen. I know I've fallen into that trap, but I would just say be intentional in how you commit to maintaining those connections with others. Next slide, please. All right, and so some of these things were shared by others in the chat. Volunteer for a cause that you're passionate about, or search for some online meetup groups or communities to further your social connections. Some of these groups might meet virtually, some of them might meet in person. And I think, there's something for everyone, regardless of your comfort level of how you want to engage with others. Another suggestion is to try out a new hobby, discover something that you would like to learn more about, develop a new skill, etc. And that's another great way to meet people. And I would also encourage, through those connections you make, are there other people that they might be able to introduce you to? So maybe some secondary or tertiary connections that can be another organic way of making those new connections to expand your network. Next slide, please. All right, Jeremy, I think this is back to you.
Yeah, so I think it's from the conversation and the comments, it's seeming that a lot of people are acknowledging that work-life relationships, people have a little bit more connections with work-life relationships, just from some of the comments I've been reading. But we also still want to highlight this, and I think I want to also add that these can probably be applied to non-professional and work life as well, in addition to what Anna shared. So the first is creating a buddy system. So essentially, find a buddy, a trusted or close coworker or a close friend if this is outside of work. But in short, in the context of work, a close coworker that you can check in with regularly. This could be work goals, this could be challenges, good things that are happening, maybe even sharing tips about things you're both experiencing, right? But that's a nice avenue to explore. Perhaps starting with someone who you are close with, and then maybe someone whom you might like to get close to, and just connecting a little bit more regularly and having these general conversations and check-ins. You can also try an employee resource group or affinity group. So ERGs are groups available for protected classes, for example, race or ethnicity, gender identity, etc. And affinity groups can be groups with people who have like minds, right? And they may come together for a common cause. For example, a gardening group or environmental justice, or maybe a running group or knitting group, right? They can be so many different things, but those can also be avenues for, as you all were saying, if you're not sure how to make that entry into even starting a conversation and taking that step, perhaps start by being in a space with people who are like-minded like you. So you're automatically having something to help you start a conversation and build a connection. And employer resource groups and affinity groups are great for that. And then participate in wellness programs and classes offered through WorkWell NYC. If you're the health department, we also our wellness program also offers lots of programming in addition to WorkWell. And participate in sessions like this that you all are engaging in. You can meet others virtually, and for those events in person, you can meet in person as well. And then, next slide. Okay, so along with the others, I just want to share really quickly, call or text a coworker you haven't spoken to in a while. I know for me, being in this hybrid setting and having the impacts of the pandemic, as Anna mentioned earlier, like there's a lot of change and a lot of staff may have moved, working different times, different days, etc. Give someone a call today, give them a ring, be like, hey, I just came out of this workshop and it told me to call a coworker I haven't spoken to in a while, so I'm giving you a ring right now. If you want to go a step further, schedule a 7-minute meeting. And this is essentially 7 minutes for you to set aside to meet. And know we're all busy, but maybe within 7 minutes, you'll be surprised. Maybe 7 minutes turns into 10 and 15, and you can make a meaningful moment out of that connection. And then just last tip for building connections within work, if you're a supervisor, schedule regular meetings and check-ins with your team and ask meaningful and supportive questions. As supervisors and leaders, sometimes there's the mindset of, oh, we're meeting for a check-in to talk about the work, right? And while the work is important, there's a person behind the work. So it's important to ask questions. How are you doing? Is there anything I can support you? And just being a little bit more available and emotionally present to support your staff as well. So hopefully these tips resonate with you. And if you have others that you'd like to add to this, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I see there are lots of comments coming in, but I'm going to pass it over to Ivy to wrap us up with some holiday considerations when thinking about loneliness and our social connections. Ivy?
Thanks, Jeremy. There's been a lot of stuff going on in the chat, and I've been listening and reading and absorbing, and there were just a couple of things I wanted to mention before we do move on to holiday considerations. Someone in the chat had mentioned a fear of rejection, right? This is something that can be, we talked a little bit about boundaries and barriers. This can be a barrier to us in terms of making connections, whether those are social connections, work connections, even with family that we've known, our whole lives. This fear of rejection. There's some things that you can try out yourself, trying to figure out what it is that is causing this fear within you, and that can be very difficult. But it's something that may take an outside perspective to help you address. You can always reach out to EAP, which is where I'm from, and I'll talk a little bit more about our services, to find out about things that we can do around fears of rejection, socializing, things of that nature, and we can always help you get connected if you need further something beyond, just a discussion. We can always help you get connected to those resources as well. So I just wanted to put that out there as well. And also people were mentioning difficulty, finding free activities to do or things without the expectation of spending money. That's definitely something I totally understand. And, people were coming up with a lot of good ideas. I wanted to highlight some of them. The public libraries, Brooklyn, Queens, New York public libraries all have really great activities. There's also certain meetup groups I think we mentioned that are free as well. So there's stuff out there, definitely worth taking a look into. Especially this time of year, because as we all know, it's the holiday season. And a lot of times we can experience a lot of different things during the holiday season, especially for those of us who may have recently or in the past lost someone or spending the holidays without our loved one, and it can be a very difficult time. So holidays can bring up those emotions about those who are no longer with us, and our loved ones may be in different parts of the country as well. Even if they're, still here with us, they may be, not physically here with us, and maybe far away. Sometimes our family dynamics are not always how we want them to be. So even if you have family members or loved ones who live next door, right? Maybe it's not the best dynamic or the best relationship, and that can cause stress, especially this time of year as well. So what do? It's important to take stock of the people who are in our social circles, who are the people who support us, who are the people who we can turn to for that, support and that trust, and effectively communicate our needs to them and listen to what their needs are as well, right? This goes hand in hand with what we talked about healthy boundaries as well. EAP also offers a bereavement and grief and loss group available for all city employees. So you can always contact us for further information on that, and we'll have that information in just a moment. Next slide, Jeremy. So I just wanted to briefly show this little letter someone wrote to themselves on social media about the grief that they experienced during the holidays. Just to summarize, grief can be difficult to manage just on a regular day, but especially during the holidays, it can be even more difficult. And, the bottom line is to remember that holiday grief is a mixture of wanting what was, but trying not to miss out on what is, right? So remembering our past with our loved one and that they're no longer here with us, whether that's because they live far away or because they've passed on, but trying not to miss out on the present, on what is, right? And what we can do to stay connected in the present. Okay, next slide. So just to summarize everything we've talked about, social connections are an integral piece to overall wellness. Anytime anyone in your life can, at any time in your life, you can take steps to strengthen those connections. By reaching out, maybe if people aren't good at reaching back out to you, maybe setting a scheduled time to meet or speak with people that is regular, so it can be easy to stick to. Challenge yourself to cherish the relationships and expand opportunities to connect with others. Take stock of the people in your social support network and be sure to effectively communicate your needs. And choose one thing that you learned about today and think about how can you implement that into your life. So are you going to go and make a plan with a friend? Are you going to join a meetup? Are you going to go out to dinner with your coworkers? What is it that you're going to take away from this meeting today? Now, just some resources. If you are in crisis or have a mental health emergency, 988 is the mental health emergency hotline. You can call, text, or chat with them 24/7. So you would call or text to 988. Or this is the link to their website as well, where you can chat as well, and you'd be connected with trained counselors. EAP. EAP helps New York City employees and their families get connected to mental health and/or substance use services. We can also provide information on other resources depending on your situation. So even if you're not sure, give us a call, see what we can do to help. Services are free and confidential. Okay, so please don't hesitate to reach out. Your information will not be shared without your explicit written consent, so everything is confidential. Our services are available to all New York City employees as well as family members, right? And we have a very broad definition of family, so your loved ones are also eligible for our services. We're open Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. You can reach us at 212-306-7660 or email us at eap@olr.nyc.gov. And you can also find us on the Office of Labor Relations website. And then WorkWell, Anna, did you want to take this one?
Yes, back to me. All right. So WorkWell NYC is another great resource. So WorkWell NYC is the worksite wellness program for all City of New York employees. And our goal is to help all city employees, such as you all here today, to be as healthy as possible. And so our programs range from physical activity to healthy eating, primary care and prevention, mental health and resilience, as well as health equity. And so we encourage you to check out our upcoming events. I'll put the link for that in the chat and talk a little bit more about that later. But definitely please utilize WorkWell NYC as a resource as well. Oh, yes, upcoming events. All right, so we have a few exciting things happening in January. So we have a vision board workshop that will be taking place in person at OLR. This will be on January 18th from 6 to 7:30. And so essentially with the vision board workshop, you'll be reflecting on, visualizing, and manifesting your goals for the new year. And through the vision board workshop, you'll be using some creative techniques and flexing your creative expression to create your vision board. And we'll have some supplies provided for you, but for anyone who is attending, you're encouraged to bring some personal embellishments to really personalize and tailor your own vision board. And then another event that we're really looking forward to is the Winter Workout Fest. So we know that with the new year, many people have New Year's resolutions, wellness goals, etc. And so this is an exciting collaboration with the Parks Department. And so there will be two events. The one on January 20th is taking place in Manhattan. I'll share more information about that later. But essentially, this is a group fitness series from 10 to 1 p.m. with a variety of classes taught by Shape Up NYC instructors and a really another exciting thing about that is for people who attend, they will receive a free one-day pass to return to the recreation center where the event was held. And then there will be a second date in Queens, but I'll follow up with more information in an email for all of you. And then lastly, we have a webinar on cultivating resilience to combat burnout. And so we know that many city employees may be experiencing feelings of burnout. They may be feeling disengaged and just generally unproductive and exhausted from work. But through this event, we'll be learning about resilience, how to develop and leverage your inner strengths in order to overcome these feelings of burnout. And we will share some additional resources for that as well. So again, I'll share the link to the upcoming events in the chat, and more information with these details will be coming in an email to you very soon.
All right, and I know we're at time, so I just want to, I know we have a lot of health department staff online, just letting you all know that our open house is coming up in the new year, and this is where we showcase different organizations and programs that can help you on your goals, your health and wellness goals for the new year. So please stay tuned and be on the lookout for that. So in closing, we're going to just put up a quick poll, and if you can just vote for us on your way out. But I will just say thank you all again for joining us this afternoon, and I hope this conversation was meaningful. And I noticed a lot of comments wanting some more time in that breakout room. So realizing that this was a good opportunity for you to connect with others. So we'll keep that in mind as we continue to help you build more connections within the new year. So thank you from myself. Ivy, Anna, any last words?
I think that pretty much covers it for today. And so based on the poll results, I am very happy to see that the majority of people replied that they feel very confident or somewhat confident in their ability to strengthen or expand your social connections. And so I see some people in the chat already sharing links, resources, suggestions for connecting. And I am really happy to see that. I hope, people feel empowered to take those next steps to do what they need to do to make sure that their social needs are met. So thank you all very much for joining us today. I'll turn it over to Ivy if there's any final remarks.
Yeah, I think you guys pretty much covered it. I saw a lot of great resources in the chat. Connect with your coworkers, network, find out what works for others. Maybe it'll work for you. You can always reach out to the EAP for support around some people were interested in the bereavement group. So please reach out. We can get you connected to that as well. Someone also mentioned meetup.com is still a thing that people can access, find your interests, your niche groups, and connect that way. So don't give up, keep looking.
All right, bye everyone. Thank you.
Thanks
Have a
for
good day and happy holidays.
Thank you. Happy holiday.